Wicked Whims. Where to begin? Obviously, if you've clicked on this video, you probably have some idea as to what Wicked Whims does. It's quite an infamous mod, but it's not all NSFW stuff. There's actually loads of different features, add-ons, and settings that overall make your game so much more realistic. In this video, I'll be going over every feature of both Wicked and Wonderful Whims, as well as my personal settings that I use in my game. So let's get into it. So Wicked and Wonderful Whims introduce many of the same features into your game. They're essentially the same mod, with Wonderful Whims being more PG and Wicked Whims being, well, wicked. I'll be discussing the features both mods have first, and then delving deeper into Wicked later in the video. I personally use Wicked in my game for an extremely specific reason that I'll clue you in on later in the video, but most of my settings would work in Wonderful Whims as well. The attraction system. Both Wicked and Wonderful come with a much more complex attraction system than the one in Lovestruck. You can adjust and tweak a sim's turn-ons and turn-offs, which include but aren't limited to hair color and length, body shape, clothing styles. You can either decide to choose these preferences yourself or automatically generate them through the mod, which is what I always do. You can ask sims about their attractiveness preferences and will get a pop-up on their likes and dislikes, which might encourage your sims to switch up their appearance a little. The whole system has a huge impact on gameplay. You actually have to think about what your Sims' preferences are, and it adds more depth and more of a challenge, which I really enjoy. Sims can also scope their surroundings to see if there's anyone around them that they find attractive, which will be shown by a Sim having a pink heart above them. Personality archetypes. Wicked and Wonderful Whims introduce personality archetypes into the game, which give your Sims more personality and can impact first impressions. There are 9 different archetypes, which are shown on the screen here, and they are determined by your Sim's personality traits. Every personality archetype comes with conversation topics and impact how Sims interact with each other. The menstrual cycle and birth control. The ability to have periods and a whole menstrual cycle in The Sims is probably one of the most popular features of this mod. It adds such a layer of realism to the game, which so many people love. When Sims are on their periods, they can suffer from hormonal side effects through moodlets, and they can purchase tampons and pads from either build buy mode, the PC, or by going to the Wicked or Wonderful store through their phone. Speaking of phones, Sims can track their periods and fertility windows through an app on their phone. Sims will also experience different flows depending on their genetics and what day of the cycle they're on, and there are even interactions between Sims of a certain sparkly persuasion who become interested in Sims with heavier flows. Although that might just be a Wicked feature, I'm not too sure. A Sim's menstrual cycle will actually affect their levels of fertility depending on what phase of the cycle they're in, which adds a whole new layer to getting pregnant in the game. You actually have to think about it and plan for it to a degree, although obviously accidents can still happen. So to avoid any surprise babies, Sims can buy and use condoms or birth control, again through the PC, the store, or build buy mode. Although as in real life, birth control options are never 100% accurate, so if your Sim ends up pregnant and doesn't want to be, there is actually an option to terminate in the first and second trimester. STDs. Sims can actually contract and spread crab lice, which can be caught through woohoo or by sleeping in infested beds. Ugh. It causes extreme itching, and your Sim must purchase a lice-killing shampoo and use it in the shower or bath to treat it. The shampoo makes your Sim temporarily immune to catching it again for a few days, and there is an immunity reward trait in case you never want your Sims to catch it again. Posing. The last feature I'll mention that both mods have is the posing interface. Wicked and Wonderful Whims introduce the best posing interface I've ever used as a content creator, and it's honestly my most used feature of the mod. It allows users to easily manage, select, and adjust Sims poses without needing separate mods like Andrew's pose player. And not just Wicked poses, literally any pose you download. In fact, I've never even used this feature for woohoo poses in all the years that I've had it in my game. You can move Sims in customizable increments to get them perfectly lined up, and it even remembers what pose pack you're using and automatically opens it again for you, so you don't have to spend ages scrolling through and looking for the pack when changing poses. One thing I will mention, which is understandable understandable but still a negative in my books is that the posing interface only works on teens to elders. So if you have any pose packs with infants, toddlers, or children, you'll still want to use Pose Player to pose those sims. If you guys want a full video on all the posing mods I use, how to use them, how and where to find good poses to get screenshots, thumbnails, and family portraits like this, then be sure to let me know in the comments. So all those features that I mentioned are in both Wicked and Wonderful Whims, and now we're getting into the features that only Wicked Whims has. So if you don't want all the adult stuff, then I recommend downloading Wonderful Whims and maybe skipping ahead in this video to the settings section. Naturism. I want to emphasize right off the bat that this mod does completely remove the mosaic blur in the game and removes underwear, including when you're in Create a Sim. You can quite literally see everything. Yes, everything, because certain add-ons involve very detailed versions of human anatomy. Luckily, there is a censorship add-on made for streamers and content creators, which I use, obviously, but I even used it before I started creating content. Maybe I'm just a bit of a prude, I don't know. Anyway, Naturism, the act of being completely undressed, is a new skill that comes with Wicked Whims. Sims can improve this skill by wearing increasingly more revealing outfits like swimwear or their underwear out in public, or by undressing completely at home. The higher the skill, the braver your sim gets about undressing in public. There's also an exhibitionist reward trait and a lot trait that will bring other naturists to that lot. Window peeping and panty stealing. Peeping Tom and Peeping Tina are two new NPCs who will occasionally spawn on your lot to watch sims through the window. Apparently this is only supposed to happen when a couple is woohooing, but I've had Tina pop up randomly in my videos when nothing promiscuous was happening. Not only can NPCs do this, your sims can actually be nosy and peep through others' windows, but be careful because if they're caught, they can get into trouble. Woohooing sims might also drop underwear on the floor, which can then be picked up, and underwear is a brand new collection added with the mod. There are 10 different styles of underwear to collect, and you can find them after your sim or other sims woohoo, as well as by rummaging through someone's wardrobe. There's also an entire new attribute, the weirdo, assigned to some townies in the game, and a new lot trait that allows weirdos to gather and be weird together. Wicked Woohoo. Obviously, this is kind of the main feature of Wicked Whims. The mod comes with a small selection of animations already, but there are hundreds, if not thousands, of animations you can find through the official website. I'd always recommend downloading animations or add-ons directly through the official site just to be safe. You can actually woohoo in a massive variety of places, like against a wall or on a chair. And woohoo is not just limited to two sims. There's also new woohoo traits you can assign sims, which affect how they woohoo and what they do during. The very specific reason I use Wicked instead of Wonderful, even though I end up disabling a lot of Wicked features due to being a content creator, is this pop-up feature. I haven't seen this as a feature of Wonderful, so do correct me if it is a feature and I've just missed it, but I love anything in my game that gives my sims autonomy or lets them tell me what they want to do, and this pop-up feature is just one of my favorites. Sims will autonomously approach partners or just other sims that they find attractive and proposition them with a pickup line, and you have the ability to accept or say no to varying degrees. I just love this, as like I said, I don't like micromanaging my sims too much, and this is just such an obvious sign that they're like in the mood and want to woohoo. The reason the pop-ups make such a difference for me personally is sometimes sims interactions will randomly cancel out. So although I have autonomous woohoo and try for baby enabled through MC Command Center, if I don't catch my sims going off to do that interaction and then it cancels, I have no idea they wanted to do that. The pop-ups are such a good visual cue for me and are really helpful in that regard. You also get pop-ups about other sims joining in or your sim wanting to join in with others, which is always so chaotic and dramatic. If Wonderful had these pop-ups for Woohoo, I would probably just switch over to it, but for now I'm sticking with Wicked. Pole dancing and clubs. Wicked Whims comes with Woohoo clubs that you can own and run yourself, which can be set up through the phone menu. It uses the retail system, so this feature does need Get to Work to function. them. You can build your own or get one off the gallery. Yes, they exist, but just make sure to check custom content when you're searching for them. You can hire employees as dancers and even have your own Sims dance as well. Dancers will obviously use the poles, but they'll also tend any bars and take clients to private rooms as well. You can assign uniforms or lack thereof, set opening hours, and purchase perk points just as you would a normal retail business. You also don't have to run the club. You can set it up so that an NPC runs it and just go as a client. Simhub. I have to be so honest with you guys. This feature and the last one are ones that I've never played with personally, so I can't speak from experience here, but Simhub is an alternative way to make money in the game. Sims can make money through selling pics online and can either upload them for all of their followers or to exclusive subscribers. Apparently, it's a very in-depth feature that rewards consistent posting in a variety of different settings so that followers don't get bored, and you can earn benefit points which can temporarily boost your channel as well. Extras and add-ons. One of the smaller things Wicked introduces is pubic hair, which can be trimmed and even dyed and styled by clicking on a mirror. Your Sims can also get a fake tan through their phone, which is a rabbit hole feature. Sims also sweat when performing vigorous activity, be that woohoo or just working out, and there is a reward trait to prevent sweating. There is also a new social event, a woohoo party, which seems like it could be extremely chaotic to try out. And obviously Wicked Whims works alongside other packs as well, like being able to create clubs about wicked woohooing and naturism with get together, having your reputation impacted if you're caught peeping or woohooing publicly with Get Famous, and wicked business activities and adventure activities with businesses and hobbies and adventure awaits respectively. My settings. There are tons of features in this mod and a lot of them can be turned off or tweaked to your liking through the settings menu. If you want to disable nudity or the menstrual cycle, you can do that. Or if you want to edit the payment rates of Simhub models, you can do that as well. Here are my personal settings for the game as a content creator who really can't be showing all that much. To access the Wicked settings menu, you click on your sim, you go to Wicked, and then you'll see a bunch of things here. So this is where you pose your Sims, which I can and will make a whole video about that, so I won't include that in this video, but we want to focus on this settings option here and go to Wicked Whims settings. So here you'll see the Wicked Whims settings menu. There's a lot to get through here. So this section is basically turning on and off different features of the game. So if you don't want your Sims to participate in these kind of interactions at all, you can uncheck this and they will just do the woohoo and try for baby interactions. You can also set the autonomy. There are layers that can show up on Sims bodies after they do the deed. So I actually have that turned off because obviously YouTube wouldn't really like that kind of stuff. You can turn off the crab lice STD completely. You can turn off the menstrual cycle completely, but I have that left on. Then here you can turn off nudity and pubic hair. So I have both of these turned off because again, even though I use the streaming mode, sometimes I found that it does glitch out and a sim will just be naked on my screen and I'll have to cut around that clip when I'm making videos. So especially when I go into streaming and stuff, I just want to make sure that nothing is being shown. So I have these off. I do have the sweating overlay switch on because that's just kind of realistic. It can get a little bit annoying because Sims do sweat a lot and very often. So every now and again I'll turn this off, but generally I keep it on. I do have window peeping switched on because as creepy as they are, I do kind of find it funny that these NPCs show up on my lot, especially if I get to send someone out to beat them up. I do have the creep NPC switched off at the minute, but again, I kind of switch it on and off depending on if it kind of suits the vibe of whatever I'm filming. For example, like in my Very Veggie series, it's a lot more like grungy, down to earth, a lot more chaotic, so I would probably put this on for that series. But my Whimsy Stories is a lot more wholesome and family-centered gameplay, so I don't know, I feel a bit weird having the creeps on in Whimsy. At least for Generation 1, I feel like as we get on, that's going to change. Like I know that Gen 3 of Whimsy is going to be very chaotic, so a lot of these are probably going to come into full force in Generation 3. I also have Simhub switched off. Again, I've never really played around with this, but it's something that I would be open to exploring again, maybe in generations of challenges that it makes sense for. I have the Sims attractiveness switch turned on. Obviously, I find that the attraction system in Wicked Whims is very in-depth and detailed, and I really like it, so I like having this on. Same with relationship impressions. I use the first impressions mod as well, which I think has more of an impact, but I do like just having this on in the background as well. And finally, the dreaming switch. I think this is so funny and adds a little bit of like chaos and drama, and I just really like it because again, I love knowing what my Sims are thinking, what they're up to, what they want to do, and I think their like subconscious is trying to tell me things when they have dreams about other people, so I like keeping this on. Then going into the nudity settings, obviously you can change a bunch of these things here. I have nudity off in my game, so I actually don't have to go in and change any of these things, but if you want to tweak it a little bit, you absolutely can. So then we get into woohoo settings. I'm trying really hard not to get demonetized here for this video, so forgive me for calling this woohoo, but I'm trying not to get in trouble here. So here you have the woohoo settings, and you can actually change a bunch to do with this. So under interaction settings, you can actually have it so that teens can wicked woohoo instead of just mess around, which is the default in the game. You can set the duration, the progression of things. So how this works is Wicked runs off of a list of animations. They can be random or you can customize them yourself, and they can last a certain amount of time. They can progress in different ways. You can speed up certain aspects of it. It's all very customizable. Then under the outfit settings, I actually have auto dress up after Wicked Woohoo on completely, which means that they always dress up afterwards. Half checked means that they will dress up depending on the location and the situation, which basically means if there's other Sims around, or especially children Sims around, they will definitely dress up, but otherwise if they're kind of alone in a room with no one else, then they won't. I really recommend just going in and looking at every single setting in all of these menus because there is a lot that you can play around with here. I'm obviously not going to show everything. I'm only showing the ones that kind of pertain to my gameplay and what ones I've changed from the default. But something that's really cool is you can actually have height slider mods support, which will make it so that Sims heights adjust with those animations, which means that they will be properly lined up with each other. Just say they're kissing. One Sim won't be kissing the other Sim's forehead. They will actually line up properly, which is important. So going into the relationship settings here, I have a few things changed. I actually have relationship awareness checked off, which means that Sims won't necessarily stay faithful to their partners, which I just like to add because it's a little bit chaotic and dramatic. I also have the joining relationship compliance checked off, which basically means that joining Sims only have to have a romantic relationship with one participant if there are multiple people involved. Otherwise, they have to have a romantic relationship with everyone involved, and that's not necessarily accurate depending on the Sim. It also, again, is a little bit more chaotic, so I like it. And again, I have the joining gender compliance off because, again, bit of chaos. Maybe people are trying things out, you know, maybe they're exploring a little bit. I like the drama, okay? So in other settings here, I wanted to point out really quickly that you can actually turn off woohoo and try for baby interactions in the game. You will have to restart the game, but this basically means that every single woohoo or try for baby interaction is replaced by wicked woohoo, which can be very interesting. I personally just keep them both on because they serve different purposes. And there's also a cheats section, so you can make it so that everyone always accepts propositions, always accepts watching, which is a feature. You can direct NPCs through Wicked Woohoo. As I said, it's very customizable. There are a ton of really in-depth settings, so again, I really suggest just going through this and kind of figuring out what you guys like to play with. Moving on to pregnancy settings. So I have both the menstrual cycle and the teen menstrual cycle on. Obviously, I like playing with those. You can actually change how absorbent things are, certain fertility levels. So mine's actually on boosted for some reason. I don't know about that. I'm gonna leave it because that's what I've been playing with, but I didn't realize that you can switch how long they are, so it's actually on automatic. Then we have birth control settings, and this is really interesting because you can make them automatic use, or you can make it so that you have to remember to use them. I have everything on automatic use, but what I do have is the accuracy is on realistic mode, which means that there is a chance of it failing to prevent pregnancy. You can change this to unreliable mode if you want even more chaos, and you can change NPC's birth control use behavior. So I have it on moderate, which I think is the default, but again, you can kind of switch this around and make it so that they rarely own and use birth control, or that they always own and use birth control. So in the other settings under pregnancy, there are a few things that I have changed. The first thing being pregnancy duration. I actually have it on 6 sim days. If you have watched my MC Command Center video, you will have seen that I also have pregnancy duration set to 6 days through that. I actually don't know for sure which one of those wins out and kind of overrides the others, but to be safe, I always have them on the same amount. So 6 days. The next switch that I'll show you guys that I've changed, the default of this is always ticked on, but basically I like to play as realistic as possible, and that means that I have this turned off because the male pregnancy in the game, if they are cisgender men, not really realistic. I prefer to have my same-sex couples try to go through like IVF or adoption or even science babies. It seems like a few of my settings have actually switched off for some reason. There was a recent update, so maybe my settings didn't move over properly, but if anything looks different between clips, that's probably why. I've just noticed that something's just not quite right. So on that, I want to go down here to override game mods pregnancy. So I have this checked, which will allow Wicked Whims pregnancy functionality to override woohoo and try for baby interactions. This basically means that this is the primary way that my Sims get pregnant. Sometimes I have this off, sometimes I have it on. Sometimes I don't mind having both kind of interact with each other, but it can get a bit complicated. So I have this checked off right now. I also have transform all woohoo interactions to allow for pregnancy. So this is essentially risky woohoo, and I love having this in my game. It's realistic. What can I say? I love a bit of chaos. So there's that. I also have checked off miscarriage because unfortunately that is a very realistic part of the game. If that's not something you want to play with, you can absolutely keep it off. I think the default is it off. And something that's really interesting about this setting is if you check it off, then you get this additional setting, which is miscarriage add offspring switch, which can allow for unborn offspring to be added to the family tree. So if your sim loses a baby, then you can actually have them added to the tree, regardless of the fact that they weren't ever born, which I think is a very nice feature. And then down here, you can completely disable pregnancy from the Wicked Woohoo interactions, but of course I have that off. Then for relationship settings, I have pretty much everything set to default. If you go into relationship utilities, I have open relationship switch set to on because that does allow for romantic interactions between multiple partners and multiple marriages, which is always an interesting dynamic. It doesn't mean that everything is always open, but it does mean that you have the option for it. You can also change all of the jealousy switches here. And something interesting about Wicked Whims is they actually have a headlines effect settings, and you can enable or disable headline effects. So just to show that here, if you see Shar has a little glumbob above her head, but if I were to go into Wicked settings, scroll down, headline effects, disable, then it's gone, which is very handy. It means that you don't have to type that command up in the command box if you do Control-Shift-C. So those are my main settings when it comes to Wicked Whims. And one final thing, there is a misconception that using Wicked Whims will have your accounts banned by EA. That is just not true at all. In fact, EA has even acknowledged Wicked Whims in the game themselves, so they know it exists. You're okay. You won't get in trouble. Anyway, I hope you guys found this video helpful. This mod adds so many new features to the game and really helps to make The Sims 4 feel more realistic and immersive. No doubt I've forgotten to mention something, so please let me know if I have in the comments. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you next time. Bye!